Welcome back to Woodbeard Meets Makers. I am your host, Christian, aka Woodbeard, and I've got a good one for you today. Lacie Williamson is a multidisciplinary artist and owner of Creative Barracks Studio in Dunnville, Ontario. Creative Barracks is dedicated to authentic creative expression for all ages and abilities and all walks of life. It's such a cool place. Also, I believe if you look up the word resilient in the dictionary, you would find a picture of Lacie. Her story is wild and so inspirational. I can't do it justice, but I'll leave it to her to explain. But quickly, before we kick off this episode, if you wouldn't mind giving this podcast a like or a share or review, I'd greatly appreciate it. And if you would like to be on the show, head over to woodbeard.ca/podcast and fill out the application form just like Lacie did. So with all that out of the way, here's Woodbeard meeting Lacie Williamson. Well, thank you so much, Lacie, for being here and talking to me. It's so nice to meet you. I'm very excited to chat. I like to gauge people's comfort levels straight off the bat. What's your comfort level on a scale of 1 to 10 with talking about yourself like this?
Oh, 10.
Yeah?
Yeah, no problem.
Amazing. Have you always been like that, or is that just like come with the territory?
Yeah, it's definitely been pretty norm for me, but it's only gotten better or worse depending on your perspective.
Nice. All right, I'm gonna start off with some basic getting to know you questions.
Cool.
Do you have a favorite color?
Purple.
Purple. Nice. Any shade of purple or just purple?
A nice rich shade, like royal purple or like plum.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite food?
Pizza or chicken fingers.
Nice.
About as basic as it gets, but it's because you can't go wrong.
No, that's so true.
Yeah.
I'm pizza as well. You
Yeah.
can't go wrong. Do you have a favorite movie or TV show?
So there's a tie between two movies. They're very different. One is The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Nice.
And the other is Cloud Atlas. They're both based on books. Cloud Atlas is the story of the same soul living like 7 different lifetimes over hundreds of years.
Oh, wow.
And it's amazing. It's just beautiful.
Nice. I'll have to check that out.
Yeah. It's one of those movies that like you watch it once and then go, I need to watch it again. But then every time you watch it, you're like, I think I need to watch it more because you notice other things.
Nice. I love those.
Yeah.
Very cool. Do you have a favorite band or music genre in general?
So I listen almost exclusively to instrumental EDM. Which can be a lot for most people.
Yeah.
But I find I don't want other people's lyrics in my head.
Okay.
So when I listen to music, it's to either energize or focus, and I don't need other people's words repeating in my head, like earworms, you know?
Right.
And like we do a lot of work with youth, and I mean, a lot of what they listen to is like really aggressive lyrics. And I think, those are rolling around in your head all the time. How does that help you feel better on a daily basis?
That's a good point. A good point. Do you make up lyrics in your head to these songs?
Sometimes. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. There's nothing wrong with that. But I mean, there's definitely some artists that I do enjoy. It's more or less, I find that I'm always going back to that, and it's always because it energizes me.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's cool. Normally at this point, I ask my guests what it is they make. But doing my homework on you, your skill set is like so massive it was hard for me to imagine what you would say. But I guess I'm curious what your response is when people ask you what it is you do.
Okay. So I've learned the easy way to explain what I do is that I'm a multidisciplinary artist and performer who spends a significant amount of time educating other people.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Pretty succinct elevator pitch. Good job. Nice. So I'd like to step back and talk about what got you to this point, if that's cool with you.
Yeah.
Set you up on your journey as a maker and educator and artist. So for context, you're currently in Dunnville, Ontario, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Which is southern Ontario on the Grand River and
Yeah.
Lake
Yeah.
Erie.
Yeah.
We have that in common. I grew up on Grand River as well in Brantford.
Ah, beautiful.
Yeah, yeah. I don't feel like I appreciated the Grand River enough when I lived there. When I was a kid, it was, my high school was close to it. We did like kayaking and rowing for phys ed in it and stuff, but it was always like, the dirty Grand River and stuff. But
Yeah, yeah. I think I feel the same way, and especially in the last 10 years, I've really grown to appreciate it more. But
yeah,
there's a lot of social movement around the significance of the Grand River. It's not just a stream of water. It
hmm
provides a lot of life to a lot of places, and it's not just a waterscape. It's very symbolic of a lot of other cultural things going on along the Grand River for the last couple hundred years.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's very cool. I find that now that I'm older, I'm learning more about it, and I'm like, man, I
Yeah.
wish I really appreciated it more when I was living by it.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah. I did a project in 2019, and we had, as a participating artist, we had to attend an info session hosted by members from the Grand River Conservation Authority.
oh,
And
cool.
the most interesting thing I heard, being a kid that grew up on Lake Erie,
Mhm.
hearing legends of sturgeon. I think once
Yeah.
in my entire life, a sturgeon washed up on the lake, and that was like the most exciting thing in my neighborhood. So prior to the dams being put in the Grand River, the sturgeon would go all the way up the river to Cambridge to lay their eggs.
Oh wow,
But now they can't because of the dams.
the dams.
Yeah, so there's actually this conservation movement trying to push to have the dams removed from the rivers, because the only reason they were there was to make the rivers traversable for trade.
Oh wow,
Yeah,
that's interesting.
yeah, it would make the rivers much smaller, but kind of a neat little thing. I was like, I'd like to imagine sturgeon again in the river. That would be
That'd
nice.
be really cool. Yeah, I'll have to look
Yeah.
into that. So were you born and raised in Dunnville? Was that your
Yeah,
hometown, right? What
yeah.
was?
So there was nothing
Sorry.
here.
No, I was gonna say,
Um,
what was growing up there like for you?
Yeah, it was very much you were either into rural things like farming or you played sports.
Mm,
And I wasn't either of those. Um, but I was lucky that I had creative family members that love nature. So it was, well, we're going out into nature, and if you want to make art out of it, great. Um,
nice.
and because we were on Lake Erie, I had an unlimited supply of clay and
Oh,
rocks. So if I wasn't wandering around outside unattended because it was the 90s, I was painting rocks or harvesting 5-pound buckets of clay that were too big for me to carry back home, so I could like make things out of clay and then sell them at the end of my driveway, because that's what you did when you were a child in the 90s.
yeah, yeah. That's
Yeah.
incredible.
Yeah, yeah.
So do you remember the first thing you made out of clay or like rocks or something that kind of like keyed in
So
for you? Like, oh, this is something I wanted to be doing.
I think the big meaningful summer was probably like the summer of grade 3. We had a neighbor who his grandchildren moved to stay with him from Australia for a year. So all of a
Okay.
sudden we had two friends from Australia that were our age, but they had a little bit more, the older sister had a little bit more art skills than me. So it
Okay.
was, well, let me teach you how to make these adorable little chunky dragons or chunky dogs or chunky cats. And we did that every day we could. And that really started a, wait a second, I can do things and make things and people might buy them. And that started all sorts of, you know, plans and schemes. I taught myself how to make those beaded animals. I
Okay.
don't know, they were super popular, just like pony beads. and it's based on traditional indigenous beading, but it was never taught to us that way in the 90s.
Yeah.
So I started doing that and taking commissions in like grade 4. And then
Amazing.
my parents got a phone call because they were like, we don't allow sales in the classroom. And I was like, well, you can't sell these to your friends anymore. I was like, oh, okay, fine.
I
And
picture
then
you at
as I got
recess with like a booth set up and like,
right,
yeah.
yeah, literally taking commissions, little notes. I had a little book and everything.
That's
And then
amazing.
as I got older, it just kind of turned into, cousins are getting married. I'm gonna make them a rock with congratulations, and they're gonna put it in their garden. Or the
Mm.
neighbors moved in, so I got them a new rock with a painting of their home on it for their garden. And then it just morphed into I'm not painting on rocks anymore. I'm painting on wood or canvas or walls or anything you let
Right.
me.
Nice. Did
Yeah.
you attend art school at all or any formal training or?
Not really. I was very lucky that our high school, even though it was a public school, we had access to so many things that the average public school kid didn't have.
Oh, yeah.
Our school had 36 Mac computers.
Whoa.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
So we had a fully functioning audio visual editing space for video.
Oh, wow.
We
Okay.
had a movie studio, just like a studio space just dedicated for recording. We were, if you took the courses, you were fully trained in digital design using um, Adobe.
Okay.
So by the time I was finished grade 12, I knew how to edit video, edit music, film, um, do all the graphic design. Our final project was designing a magazine from beginning to end.
Wow.
Um, and then we also had a fully functioning traditional photography studio. Um, yeah, so
Amazing.
I mean, all of my electives were creative. That was my outlet. And then there were still more electives to be had. So I took tech.
Mm.
So we had a fully functioning electronic studio, mechanic studio, machine shop, salon. So I had
Wow.
all sorts of skills by the time I was finished grade 12. Like
That's
I couldn't have
incredible.
got that education anywhere else. And it's one of those things
Yeah.
that's really sad now because almost all of that is gone 20 years later. And I talk to the high school kids and I'm like, you don't understand. Like, we
Well, they would
don't
have,
understand.
yeah, no. And like, I'm probably older than you because we had, my high school had one video studio, but it was
Right.
VHS back then in
Ah,
my day.
yes. Yeah.
Um, so this time period existed. So it was so short, what you're talking about, where
Yes.
you could
Yes.
come out of high school with all of these creative skills. Like I came out of high school knowing how to, we had a dark room, so
Yeah.
we did photography and I could
Yeah.
edit stuff on VHS. And
Yeah.
that was
Yeah.
about it. I had to
Yeah.
pay for all the other stuff that I learned. But
Yeah. Yeah.
it's so
Um,
great that you got that education. And it's
it's
really sad it's not
unbelievable.
still that way. Yeah.
And then what was really beautiful, the entire English department and drama department and art department were all sort of in the same part of the school. So
Okay.
grade 12 art students, their final project was to propose and install a mural in the hallways of the school.
Oh, that's cool.
And the project started in 1991. So by the time I got there, it had been around for 30 years already. And it was this
Mm.
incredible time capsule of teen angst, really. Uh, and it was only in the last handful of years. One of my teenage students messaged me and said, the school board's painting all the murals over.
Oh no.
And I went, excuse me, what? No, they're not. And I messaged a teacher that I knew at the school, and she said, we're open today, we're closed tomorrow. If you want to get in and take pictures of your work, you need to come today.
Whoa.
So, right. And no one had told anyone. So I wandered in and I did that thing where I just play nicey nice and I smile and I ask politely. And instead of just taking pictures of my art, I took pictures of all the hallways. Um, and at this stage, there are so many people that I went to high school with that are now teachers. So
Yeah.
they're just doing their end of the year prep. They're wandering around the school. They're seeing me. I'm taking pictures. They're like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I'm taking pictures of these murals before they're literally destroyed because this
Yeah.
is history. Um, And the teachers that I were talking to, they were like, we're really upset about it, but we're not allowed to say anything or do anything.
Why not?
Right? Why not? So
Yeah.
I took all the photos and I posted them on social media. And I basically said, there's like 40 years of history about to be destroyed. And someone's got to do something about it. So we
Mhm.
started a petition and got over 10,000 signatures in like a week.
Nice.
Um, and they're still there.
Oh,
Now, the
yay.
school board keeps saying that they are going to be painted over eventually. And the current tech teacher went out of his way to studio photograph every mural individually and
Okay.
digitally remaster them so that any of the scratches or fading was gone. So
Oh,
that
cool.
now there's a professional record of them. Um, but the argument from the school board is that they want to make the school more professional for an educational setting. And
Uh,
whitewashing the walls somehow
They
makes
want to
that more
sterilize the
welcoming.
whole building.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, really, it's one of those things where it was always ownership. And, you had those days where you felt like garbage and, teen life is dramatic, but then you're like
Mhm.
looking around at the walls and you're like, oh, yeah, that guy that I don't know 20 years ago had a really dramatic day too. And he made this mural. And
Yeah.
we all understand, like,
Yeah.
so it's one of those things where art speaks beyond time and beyond age, and it reminds people of, where they've been and where they could be. And
Yeah.
getting rid of that is really problematic to me.
Yeah. I don't understand why they would want kids to learn in like a sterile environment. Like if you're around art and creativity, that would just make
Yeah.
you want to be there more, right? And like,
Right? Yeah.
yeah, like you said,
It's
that
placemaking. It's the same reason murals exist on the street. It makes people feel welcome and part of the community.
exactly.
Why isn't that the environment for school?
Why is that not the norm everywhere? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So, have you ever left Dunnville? Have you lived elsewhere? Or?
Yeah. So being that small town kid um, that wanted more from the small town.
Uh-huh.
Uh, my plan for post-secondary was get out of here as far away as possible.
Yeah.
Um, so I chose Ottawa and I went to Carleton for journalism.
Okay.
Um, and that was a really big turning point because up until that point, I was just an artsy kid in a small town, and people were like, cool, you have a hobby.
Yeah.
When I went to Ottawa, it was very eye-opening because the culture for our age group was completely different. Um, growing up a teenager in a small rural town, you found your own entertainment and your own fun, and 90% of the time it wasn't a healthy thing.
Mm.
So you got into all sorts of trouble and all sorts of experiences by the time you were legal to drink.
Right.
And when I got to Ottawa, it was kind of like, oh, you guys have no life experience. You are alone for the first time in your lives, and you just think the whole world is your oyster, and you're so overwhelmed, and everything is confusing. And I'm kind of over all of it. So I did a lot of painting just by myself in my dorm. And I had residents on the floor kind of poke their head in and be like, oh, you're actually good at painting. And it was like, what do you, I guess, I mean, I just do it. But they're like, yeah, but you're actually good. Can you make some art for me? So I started selling art my first year of university just to people that I met in the area.
Nice.
Um, and then I did 2 years at Carleton doing journalism. But my first year was the same year Facebook went public.
Oh.
So I'm in university studying mass communications from people who are supposed to be the leaders in mass communication studies. And they're telling me that social media is just a fad. Facebook's just a website. And I'm sitting in Ottawa going, but how can you tell me it's not going to change anything? Because I'm 6 hours from home and I know what's happening in my hometown right now.
Yeah.
So I did 2 years and it just slowly started to make less sense. By year two, smartphones were a thing.
Yes.
And again, all the professors were like, it's not a big deal. It's fine.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
iPhone,
So
sure.
that's it. That's it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then I switched gears and did event management at Algonquin for a year.
Oh, okay.
And that kind of started because I had been planning like concerts since I was like 15, just like with
Nice.
local bands and friends of mine in the area. And that was how I had fun. So it
Nice.
kind of was like, this is something I have a skill set of. I love doing it. Maybe I can learn a thing or two and actually do something with the marketing skills that I think going down the journalism road isn't a good idea anymore, but maybe
Yeah.
events is a thing. But that opened up a lot of doors because a lot of college programs require placements and volunteering. So I met a man named Jean Rene, and he was the executive director of a company called Human Mosaic.
Mm.
And they're a photography company that takes portraits, but each portrait becomes a pixel within a larger image.
Oh, cool.
So when I was like 20 years old, I got hired to work like $25 an hour in like 2006 to set up photo shoots and
You're
drape
rolling in it.
people. Oh, it was amazing. It was like the best experience ever. But what we did was create these large photographic digital murals that were then being installed on like the sides of like massive skyscrapers in Ottawa.
Oh, wow.
So it really allowed me to see how you can take public art and scale it, and how public art can be something more than just a picture on a wall, how it can be something that actually integrates the community into creating the image.
Nice.
Um, and then when I finished the program, I moved back home, but for all the wrong reasons. It was for a man.
Oh.
And that didn't last long because that sucked. Um, but it was sort of this shift of, well, I'm coming home with all of these things that I've always wanted to have in the community, but
Hmm.
they weren't there, and there weren't other people that had the resources to create them. So I was really excited to move back here and be like, I got skills to make crazy events. I can tell stories now. What am I going to do with this? Um, and I didn't really know. So I went back to my bartending job. Um, but I started freelance writing for a local paper. And my boss at my bartending job understood that I had bigger aspirations. So I was allowed to do my writing when I wasn't serving customers.
Nice.
And it eventually led to another local paper reaching out and saying, we'll give you full-time work if you want it, because you're local, you're telling stories that are important, and it's feel-good news. So I was like, this is my dream. That's what I wanted to do. Let's do it. So
Nice.
I did that until the day Sun Media Corporate walked in and said, we're closed
Oh,
and you
no.
no longer have a job. And thanks for everything you've done, but clean out your desk. It's over.
Oh, no.
Yeah, that was really, really terrible. But it was one of those things where, in hindsight, I fell back on my creativity.
Right.
So it was, well, I can't write full time, but I can still write. So I started writing for magazines.
Okay.
And then I started using my photography skills to do freelance photo projects. The big one, we had a local guy, Tyler Horton. He won the cup. So we brought the cup home to Dunnville.
Oh,
So
cool.
I got all these photos, and then there were all these magazines from all over Canada and the United States that wanted to license them. So I was like, sure, take them. I don't care about hockey. I just need money. Um, and then I got an offer to start teaching cooking classes.
Okay.
So I was assisting a friend of mine, but the cooking classes were for people who were prescribed the cooking class by their doctor, because their
Okay.
doctor was like, look, you have heart issues or circulation issues or some sort of ailment that is affected by your diet. And I can pump you full of all sorts of medication, but unless you're eating healthy, the medication isn't going to help. So
Oh,
the idea was teach these people how to make easy meals that are vegan, with the idea that they're low in fat. And even if you start replacing 1 or 2 meals a week, that's going to make a drastic impact in the long term.
yeah.
And so I was doing that. I did that for 3 months. And then the nonprofit that funded the program came to me and said, would you manage a cafe if we opened a cafe? And I said, I guess. Why not?
Why not?
So it was a cafe and community center. So I was running all the cafe functions, so all the coffee, tea, food service, while also simultaneously planning and facilitating special events in the community center.
Wow.
It was 100% of everything I loved and everything I wanted to see in the community,
Yeah.
but I wasn't fulfilled.
Hmm.
So what do you do when
Yeah.
you're like, this is everything that I thought I wanted, but I'm not happy?
I don't want it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it got to a point where I kind of had this really difficult conversation with the owner of the cafe, and I basically explained all these problems that I was having, and his response, which isn't a very good response, was, well, you just need to be a better problem solver.
Oh.
And I took a deep breath and I instantly knew how to solve all my problems, and I quit.
There you go.
And everyone was like, you're insane. You just gave up a full-time job that you love and believe in, and you just went from no job to a full-time job. What do you mean you quit? And I was kind of like, well, it doesn't make sense. I'm working so hard. I'm not happy, and it's not my dream.
Yeah.
So if I can work that hard for somebody else's dream, why don't I just put all that time and effort into what I want for my life? And then that's when all the magic happened. That was within 6 months. I lost my loser ex because art is stupid. I right.
Sure.
My response, right? Yeah, art's dumb. My response to that was, it's unfortunate for you because art's part of me and you're not. So
Nice. Nice.
bye. So within 6 months, I lost him. I got a studio space of my own in St. Catharines, and I got a part-time, full-time job teaching in an after-school setting at another studio.
Oh, cool.
So that was 2014. And then that just became like, there's no looking back. I just did it. I did it in 6 months. You guys were all like, you're insane. You can't do this. And I was like, ha, I've got everything that I want now. This is all. So the studio space that I had on James Street, I used it as this weird experimental exhibition space.
Okay.
So if you had a strange idea for an exhibit, let's do it. I had one artist friend from around here. She's a photographer, and she torched a whole bunch of old window frames. Okay. So they were burned, they were charred, and then she mounted images of fire into them.
Oh, cool. So
we hung them all in my studio. We draped fabric along the bottom of the wall so it looked like flames. So the whole walls were on flame. And then we shut the air off in the studio in the middle of August.
So it's hot as hell in there.
Yes. Yeah. So like, come on in. 24 James is on fire. But like, you walked in and it was like 140 degrees and you were sweating bullets and it was completely uncomfortable the entire time. But you're like, that's the point. That you're looking at fire, man. Like, that's the point.
Wow.
Or another time we had, we painted the entire room white, floor, ceiling, walls, installed white canvases, and then headless white mannequins observing all of the art.
Okay.
And then put this like weird drowning like gray noise over the entire thing. And just told people to come on in. And the idea was that everything was whitewashed except for this bust of a mannequin in the lower corner surrounded by collage material. And the idea was leave a confession and glue it to the mannequin.
Oh, okay.
So then it turned into this really weird experiment where we were recording everything on an overhead camera and watching from another room. And then it turned into this social experiment. Well, how do people act if we change the music? Oh, okay. So it was like the droning stuff. People got like really honest about their confessions. And it was like, oh, wow, okay. Like, this is dark. Cool, great. I'm glad you left this behind. And then when we'd play cheery things, they'd be happier. It'd be things like, I love it here. Or I'm enjoying my life, you know? Nice. And then that evolved into a project called Garbage in the Beautiful Embrace. And that was
Oh,
sort of a big turning point in my installation career. It was installed at the Marilyn I. Walker School of Art in St. Catharines.
okay.
So what we did was we collected all of the confessions off the bust and rewrote them on pieces of paper and threw them on
Hmm.
the floor. That's the emotional garbage dump.
Okay.
And anyone that participated in the exhibit was first welcomed into the exhibit and told, dig through the garbage dump.
Mm.
So you're just digging through confessions, except a lot of people assumed that the confessions were my own confessions.
Okay.
There wasn't really a description of them. It was just dig through the confessions of emotional garbage.
Yeah.
And then we take them through this meandering tour of a bunch of hallways and staircases, and you're interacting with mannequins or signage that talks about the art of letting go, which is a kind of a recurring theme in a lot of the work I've done.
Yeah.
And you finally get up to the second story and you come around a corner and there is a table of collage materials again. And it's your turn to leave your confession. So
Mm.
you write your confession on whatever piece of paper you want, with whatever markers you want, however you want. And then when you step out of that room, you're actually on a balcony overlooking the garbage dump.
Nice.
And you just drop
Drop it.
your piece and watch it fall and let it go. And quite often there were people digging around in the garbage and like looking up, being like, oh, new emotional garbage. This is awesome. But like that was huge. The response we got from the community was very well received, but then we also just had a lot of people being like, whoa, I wasn't expecting to cry. Like,
Oh, wow.
I found multiple pieces of emotional garbage that I could have left behind and I didn't. And now all of a sudden I feel really connected to a bunch of people that I don't even know
I
who
don't
they
even
are
know.
because
Yeah.
yeah, that anonymous feeling. And that led to me being nominated for the St. Catharines Emerging Artist Award in 2017.
Nice.
Yeah. And that was kind of a big point of evolution because that was the same time my partner and I bought a commercial building here and started opening our own studio. And I started doing that shift from, okay, I'm 100% in the Niagara region to I'm bringing it home now. And I'm reinvesting back into myself as opposed to working at someone else's studio because it just became stifling.
Yeah.
I have other plans in 6 months, and I'm asking my minimum wage boss if I can have a day off in 6 months, and she's like, absolutely not. Okay, well, this doesn't make
Okay.
sense for my life anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was just one of those things where it was like I've always kind of known the right step. Sometimes the people around you aren't willing to allow you to take that first step beside them. You just kind of
Right.
have to push them out of the way and keep going.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So that studio you set up in 2017, that was Creative Barracks, which
Yeah.
you're
Yes.
still growing today.
Yeah. So it's in a different location. So I'm at the studio right now. We opened our first location in this small little space on Queen Street, and it had two very long, narrow workshops in it. They could have been two separate businesses. So we just kind of combined
Merged
them.
it.
And then we
Yeah.
had our apartment upstairs. And I started just teaching summer camps and then after school programming. And then it really became a, well, what do I want to teach? What am I excited to teach? What am I excited to do? Because I want to do that. Or what are the things that people teach adults but don't teach kids because whatever lame excuse they have. So the big thing was I started teaching kids graffiti. Like, let's teach them how to actually use spray paint safely and teach them how to have actual skills using spray paint, because that's why you just see a bunch of dicks spray painted everywhere, is because they don't have any skills. They don't know how to do anything. And it literally takes an hour to give them a few skills. And now all of a sudden you have something that's actually art and not just offensive.
Right.
So it's always going back to that outreach of, you can solve a lot of problems if you just accept that the people asking the questions genuinely want answers and they want to have those experiences. And a lot of the time they're met with no. And in my own personal experience, anytime I've been met with no, I hear, figure it out.
Find another way. Gotcha.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. So it was very well received, and then I started becoming a little bit more established in other ways. So I do performance.
Mhm.
At the same time, I was performing with an improv troupe in Niagara, and I was producing monthly comedy shows at a brewery. And I was doing one of our monthly shows at the brewery, and we drove home, and I was half a block away from our space. And I'm like, look, it's a lot of lights and sirens and smoke.
And smoke.
Huh,
Oh.
something's on fire close to our building. And then it was, oh, wait, our building's on fire. And everything I love and own is on fire or
Man.
being bombarded with insane amounts of water.
Yeah.
And so it's like 2 weeks before Christmas.
Oh, brutal.
It's a snowstorm. We were super lucky because it was a Friday night, and it was the night of the local fire department's Christmas party. So the local chef that works down the street left for the night and noticed smoke coming out of the windows and called 911.
Man.
And 911, the firefighters were there in less than 90 seconds.
Wow.
But
That's
even
lucky.
though they were there less than 90 seconds, they put the fire out. They figured the fire wasn't burning for more than 10 minutes, but the whole place was gutted.
Wow.
And if we were home, we wouldn't have survived. It
Whoa.
basically cut off all the entrances, so we wouldn't have gotten out. And that was so hard. And I think about it now, and I think, there were so much harder things coming. Like, the last 6 years has just
That's
been
just
like
step one.
yeah. Oh, this is bad. Just wait. But we were really lucky in the sense that I've been part of this community my whole life, and the community really appreciated what we were doing.
Okay.
So, I had a person that was currently occupying the space we're in now and trying to run an open or co-work space.
Okay.
But it's 2018, 2019, and you're trying to start a co-work space in Dunnville, and it's really trendy in the cities, but no one gets it here.
Right.
So they were kind of stuck in this lease with this giant space, and they just used one office. So they basically said, get in here. We don't want money. We have the space, and we want you to do your classes. So literally the morning after our fire, I was at a children's birthday party doing painting class.
Wow.
And there's a photo. And if you don't know me and you just look at the photo, you're like, oh, it's a painter with a bunch of kids. But if you know me, you just see like this deranged smile, because I'm just like, we're making the
Everything's
dreams happen.
fine.
Everything's okay. I still smell like smoke, and I'm on 3 hours of sleep, and I don't own anything anymore, but the kid's happy, and we painted unicorns, and it's like, that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
So we pivoted. We completely pivoted. I didn't cancel a single class. We didn't miss a single event.
Wow.
And within 3 months, I had just taken over the lease for them and said, look, you guys, if you guys don't need the office space, we'll take over the whole building.
Wow.
So I went and sat down with the landlord and basically explained, this is the vision, this is the goal. If you can work with us on rent, we'll be a tenant for the rest of your life. Like, this is everything we could possibly want in a facility.
Yeah.
And the ironic thing is that this building is where the newspaper was.
No way.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's one of those things where it always felt like unfinished business when the newspaper closed. And I never had a plan to come back to the building, but it just, one thing led to another, and we're back here. And 2023, we took over the workshop at the back.
Nice.
It had been rented out to another local business for storage. And then my landlord's insurance company said, you can't store hundreds of tires in a mixed use commercial residential building.
Just say it's an art installation.
That's it, right? So they hauled all the tires out, and we spent 3 months renovating it. So now we've got a pottery studio, stained glass studio, a splatter room, and a performance space.
Nice. It's incredible.
Yeah. So, I mean, now it's almost 3,500 square feet of just creative space for weirdos to do their thing. Yeah.
That's amazing. That's so cool. Yeah. your resiliency is just so remarkable. In the application form for the podcast, I loved your answer where I asked, do you have any topics you'd like to discuss? And your
Yeah.
response was resiliency, healing the world through radical self-expression.
Yes.
Where does your resiliency come from? It's so impressive. Like you said, you had to pivot after the fire, but you clearly had to pivot during COVID as well. And I know
Yep.
you had like personal injury and had to have surgery, so that would cause another
Yeah.
pivot. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
have you always
Yeah.
just been this resilient and like,
I think so. I
yeah,
think some of it is I've always kind of had this get to work attitude.
okay,
Um, I like growing up in the country, there was always work to be done and you did it.
yeah,
Sorry, it sucks. Sorry, you hate it, but get it done and then you can have fun.
yeah,
Um, but then I'm also really stubborn and I'm very committed to the idea that this is my path. Um, I've explored all the other things I love. I've done cooking, I've done serving, I've done bartending, I've done running a community center, I've done writing, and it always comes back to the creative aspect of things. I'm
right,
either trying to find ways to sneak creativity into my job, or I'm trying to just find more freedom from my job because it's stifling
yeah,
and it's terrible. Um, so it always comes back to if I'm going to work even harder for someone else's dream and I'm going to hate it. So
hmm,
at least I'm doing what I want, the way I want to do it, and I have the freedom to do it my way. Um, and sometimes that comes off like I'm a tyrant. But the truth is like I really approach my role as boss that way.
okay,
Um, so I have 3 staff right now. One of them is an early childhood educator. One of them is a professionally trained jewelry maker, blacksmith, and digital animator.
nice,
And the other is a teen apprentice that I hired as soon as he graduated high school because he was our co-op student and he was amazing.
nice,
But my management style is you tell me when you need days off. It isn't a question. It
yeah,
isn't an ask. It's a you tell me what you need to do with your life because your life is more important than this job
yeah,
and we'll work around it. And that's what it always comes back to is it's always about the human experience, whether the staff's human experience, the student's human experience, that is far more important than my financial bottom line or what other people think of the art because I'm not teaching people to make art that I approve of. I'm not teaching people to make art that other people approve of. I'm wholeheartedly trying to get people to accept that what you make that makes you happy is 100% better than anything else that someone's going to push you through perfection to make.
so true.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
amazing.
And like going back, so you mentioned the the pandemic.
Hmm.
I had a great time. Like like I know it was really bad for like a lot of people,
Uh-huh.
but like I had one weekend of panic because I was like, "Oh no." And then I went, "Wait a second. I don't have to market classes, plan classes, clean up after classes, or be a teacher. I could just make art." And this entire studio that I am constantly telling people isn't for me is
Just
solely for me.
solely for you, yeah.
Solely for me. So I did 35 paintings in 3 months
Wow.
and then did a Facebook art show and sold almost 10 grand in art in
Wow.
an afternoon.
Whoa.
And then I merchandised everything. So you could buy the originals or you could order merchandise. So that one day sale bought me all the merchandise that was ordered, plus enough that we could create a gift shop. So when we created the gift shop, then I just opened it up to all the makers that had spent winter of 2019 and 2020 making for spring shows, not knowing that the world was going to get shut down.
Yeah.
And then I went, look, I know that people aren't really allowed to shop, and I know that there aren't craft shows, but we're allowed to have small groups of people coming in to shop, or you can make appointments. So
Right.
we just created this gift shop full of handmade things and let people make appointments. So they did all their Christmas shopping, but 100% supported local.
That's
And then we
awesome.
just kept the gift shop because it was just amazing, like just to have all these handmade things.
Yeah.
And then summer of 2020, I went and lived up north off grid outside of Thunder Bay on the top of a mountain for a month.
Nice.
And it was amazing. I was
Yeah.
still teaching. I could teach remotely from just about anywhere as long as I had service.
Mm-hmm.
And I just had the best time ever. So the following year, I kind of did the same thing. I was like, well, we're just going to go up north for a bit, and I can't work because the government says I'm not allowed to. So bye.
Darn.
Yeah. And then finally, when we were allowed to open back up, that was when I was like, well, I've had way too much fun the last couple of years, so I need to hire staff so I can continue doing the weird things that I want to do. And I've just been so lucky. The people that I work with are the most special human beings.
Yeah.
Like, the type of people who aren't given the credit or respect they're due because they're not normal.
Okay.
But when you put them in a situation and give them the respect and the space and the environment they need to thrive, you can't find better people.
That's amazing.
They're incredible. Yeah. So I have like one person, my ECE, she's neurodivergent, she's high anxiety, she's been bullied her entire life.
Oh.
And it's affected her in a way that, I mean, it hinders her ability to enjoy life on a daily basis. And
Sucks.
in the last couple months, we've now got her running all of her pottery programming. So she's teaching all the kids pottery. And
Awesome.
she just the other day kind of pulled me aside and said, I'm really grateful that you're patient with me because I never would have done this because I'm too afraid.
Oh, really?
That's the problem with the whole world is everybody's taught that art has to be perfect. And if it's not perfect, there's no point in doing it.
True.
Well, that's horrible. That's literally horrible for everybody.
Yeah.
It's horrible for the world because we miss out on all sorts of weird stuff. It's horrible for the people because they think that they can't create something and just let it be the way it is.
Yeah.
So a lot of it, that's where that radical self-expression. I don't care if you want to scream like a donkey while you dance in a circle. If that makes you feel better, go do it.
Yeah.
I don't care. Just get it out, put it into the world, let the world deal with it. That's
nice.
Not your business.
Yeah.
And that's always gotten me through it is that, well, it doesn't matter. Other people's opinions don't matter.
True.
You can allow them to matter. But the question is, are the opinions you're allowing to matter helping you or are they hindering you?
Yeah.
Because a lot of people let voices in their head and they're not helpful. They're not supportive.
No, and a lot of voices on people's phones, which are always in their face, like you said, the early days of Facebook were kind of amazing because you could know, like I reconnected with people I hadn't talked to in 20 years. It was like, holy shit, this is really cool.
Yeah.
And now it's like, it's kind of a hellscape, social media.
It's the real life Black Mirror episode, right? It's just...
Holy, I just watched my first episode of that like this morning. I've never seen it before. And I was like, I want to watch something new. So I watched the first episode. Man.
So the first episode of the first season?
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah.
So you know what? When it first came out, it's so disturbing because we were so far removed from that future back in like 2016 when it came out. And now rewatching them, you're like, oh no. We're so much closer to this reality. It's scary. And I know like in before we started chatting, you mentioned like that question about technology.
Yes.
And there's so many like beneficial things about technology. But then there are so many things that aren't. So like I really love the fact that as a rural kid that doesn't have any exposure to creativity within the community, I could have had a connection to all sorts of creative people, creative education, creative activities just by watching YouTube, if that existed 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So I think that in itself, I can see that translating into the art skills of the teenagers. The skills that they have now as like 14 to 16-year-olds far surpasses the skills that 14 to 16-year-olds had 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And it's just because they're getting that exposure. They're getting the opportunity to dig in more often than they did 20 years ago.
For sure.
But at the same time, now you have this unrestricted access to everyone's opinions and culture. And depending on how you're raised to interact with those opinions and energy, it could be great. You could find all sorts of inspiration, but you could also find all sorts of excuses why you're not good enough to do the thing that you think you should do.
Yeah. Yeah. I've talked on this podcast with other people about the comparison game that people play. And I do it too when I see other like woodworkers whose Instagram profiles are
Yes.
carefully curated to show the good stuff, and I'm like, oh, I'm screwing up left and right here. I'm not as good,
Yeah.
but that's just,
Yeah.
it's tough. And I can only
Yeah. I mean,
imagine on kids growing up with that stuff. Like I didn't grow up with any of that, right? I was part of that
yeah.
last generation who grew up without the internet at all. And that came in when
Yes.
I was like an early teenager. And still to this day, I'm like, this is incredible. The fact that you're in Dunnville right now and we're talking to each other and this will go out and other
Yeah.
people can listen to it around the world. It's still so damn cool to me. But
Yeah.
I do get concerned for kids who grow up only knowing this and, seeing comments matter. Like they read all the comments and,
Yes.
likes mean so much to them nowadays. It's
Yeah.
kind of scary.
Well, and I think too, like that in itself can be really scary, but I also go back and think too, so we have a very large demographic of teens that frequent the studio who are neurodivergent and queer.
Okay.
And that identity in this community is very fragile. It's attacked. We're very conservative.
Uh-huh.
And I myself, as a business owner, am constantly bombarded by opinions and threats because I'm indoctrinating children.
Oh, jeez.
And I've had to explain to people the definition of indoctrination.
Yeah.
And explained that is telling people what to think and what to do.
Uh-huh.
And we do the exact opposite. I don't want you to do anything without you asking questions.
Yeah.
I want you to ask me why I'm making you use this small brush. I want you to ask me why we're using these two colors together, even though it's going to be a completely different color when the painting's finished.
Right.
It's really important to ask the questions instead of just sitting back and doing what you're told.
Right.
And I joke because as a business owner and as an artist and as a teacher, I'm a chaos gremlin because that's real. That's what life is when you get out of school, where it's just this little environment that everything's controlled for, and you have a schedule and it's everything is, what's going to happen on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Life isn't like that.
Nope.
It's harsh. The term "get used to it" is harsh.
Yeah.
But it's that idea of getting used to it just means adjusting the way you think.
Mm-hmm.
So the last 5 years has drastically adjusted the way I think. And I still haven't decided if it's for the worse or better. But like with the fire, the pandemic, and then I had the injury, I've been incredibly lucky to be able to just continue what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And that constantly reinforces what I'm trying to achieve. Because if almost a year and a half ago, I had 3 doctors staring at me saying, "You're being paralyzed by your own body.
Wow.
And you will lose the use of your legs if we don't do surgery right now." And if I could have run, I would have run away. That was like the scariest experience in my life.
I can imagine.
And then it was, boom, you're in surgery within 12 hours and you're back home and no one has any information for you. And all of a sudden your body is a foreign thing that you have no control over.
Wow.
And you're just trying to figure out how to get through every day.
Yeah.
So that was happening. And at the same time, I'm telling my staff, everything is going sideways and we're going to get through it. I have no idea how we're going to get through it. It's going to take a lot of communication.
Yeah.
And at the time, my teen co-op student, I hadn't even hired him yet. He explained to his co-op teacher what was going on. And the co-op teacher said, as long as there is an adult supervising you in the space, you can resume your co-op. So my partner started supervising him and he just worked independently 15 hours a week because he knew what to do.
Yeah.
And the only thing that I couldn't get staff to do was load and fire our kiln because it's just varying stages of drying and no one's been trained.
Yeah.
So like 3 days after surgery, I'm begging my mom just take me to the studio for 1 hour. I promise not to lift anything up. I just need to point at things and tell people where to put them. And then I will go home, I promise. And that's kind of how we did it for the first
Wow.
2 weeks. It was, I'm a potato. I can't move. I can't do anything. If you need anything, I can text. Other than that, you're on your own. And then I basically, for that whole year of 2024, I just didn't teach.
Wow.
So I could do the behind the scenes stuff, but I couldn't physically sit upright.
Wow.
Like, just crazy. And then as things were getting better, so May, June, I was starting to get a lot stronger and I was starting to feel a lot more stable. And I had put out applications for all sorts of installations and crazy ideas because I've done nothing for like 6 months but sit around and think. And I was building this piece for a new festival up north. And around the same time, my mom had been scheduled for major surgery, and I got a phone call, and she passed away.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So it was like I was just stepping back into my, like, I have creative energy and I'm super excited to create something and share it. And then it was like, all of a sudden, I don't want to touch this work of art.
Yeah.
I have so much guilt associated with it because I could have been spending time with my mom, but I'm working on this stupid mushroom thing.
Oh man.
And then my partner was like, it's okay. I'm going to finish it. And I was like, don't touch it. Like, I don't want it finished. I don't want to look at it. I don't want anyone else to look at it. And we had to pivot again because I went right back to the staff and I went, turns out I can't teach this summer. You don't want me anywhere near kids. I'm emotionally unregulated. This is not good. You thought it was bad 6 months ago. It's worse now. And they just, okay, what do you need? What do you need? And it was basically, I need you guys to just insulate me from dealing with people because I can do the behind the scenes work, but I can't be the happy, friendly, peppy, excited person right now because I'm so immersed in like grief. And so many other emotions because I still wasn't processing my injury, you know? So it was one of those things. So now it's a year and a half later. I'm creating again, teaching again.
Good.
And that interaction with creative people is so fulfilling. Nice. You know, like it goes back to, okay, I was doing everything I loved 10 years ago and nothing felt fulfilling. And now it's like, I'm sore and I'm sad and I'm grieving, but like nothing makes me happier than sitting down at a table full of weird little kids or weird adults. It doesn't matter what age, just weird humans.
Bunch of weirdos. Yep.
Yeah. And that my ability to sort of be honest about everything, sometimes pleasantly honest, sometimes unpleasantly honest. That's kind of opened up the opportunity for everyone else to be a little bit more honest and real. And it's that conversation of like, I can't be a good teacher or a good leader if I can't be authentic. I'm asking everyone in the space to be authentic, but I'm going to stand here and not be authentic. That doesn't make sense.
Nope.
Yeah.
And kids especially will be able to read right through that, right?
Oh my goodness, yes, absolutely. And that's sort of where I find art programming in schools a little bit detrimental. Because it's very much, here's a skill, copy the skill. Great, you've done the thing. I don't have a problem with teaching skills, but there needs to be a third opportunity to say, now that you have all these skills, what are you going to do with it your way? Right. Because that's where that individuality and that freedom comes out. Otherwise, you're just being shoved into a box and checking marks to fit someone else's rubric. And then you end up with a whole bunch of adults that just stand around and go, did I do it right? Do you like it?
And they're all doing the same thing.
Yeah. And like when I teach adults, it's so difficult because I literally start every adult class with a little bit of a spiel that is, no one here is a photocopier. Great. Okay. So already we know that no one here can do exactly what I do. And now that we all know that nothing is going to be exactly what I do, you're here to make something for you, not me. Please don't ask me if I like it. I'm never going to see it again unless you invite me over. But otherwise, you're here to make something for you. And my only job is to make sure that when you're done, you're really excited that you made something that you want to look at again or give away. You're not here to appease me and my idea of what is beautiful.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is like a pretty vital part of being an artist and making things, is like,
Yes.
you're making
Yes.
it just for the sake of making, not like once it gets out in the
Yes.
world, people are going to see it however they see it or experience it however they're gonna, but that's
It
out of
could
your
be a
hands.
masterpiece, and it could be a masterpiece, and there's still some asshole in the world that's going to look at it and go,
Yeah.
like, that's bad.
Exactly.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
There's people taping bananas to walls and making millions. So.
Right? My God. Meanwhile,
Right?
I tape an
Imagine how
avocado
much
to a
guts.
wall and nothing.
Right? I know. It's the wrong demographic.
Yeah, I
It's
guess.
the wrong demographic.
Yeah. What would you say is your proudest achievement to date? The thing you're most proud of? Could be in your art, could be in the business, could be in life in general.
It's really hard because I find that I separate myself almost into sort of two pieces. I'm the artist that makes art, and then I'm the artist that teaches other people.
Right.
I very much take great pride in what my students accomplish because it isn't at all about me.
Right.
It's really quite joyful to see the kids that started taking art classes with me 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Now being like 18 and being like, oh, I just did this incredible drawing without any instruction, and it's amazing and it's better than anything I could do.
Yeah.
You know? But at the same time, I'm also constantly trying to remind them that as an artist, complacency is your enemy, and you should always be willing to try something new or work on something that's giving you a hard time, because you can always get better and you can always learn new things. So it's really important for me to always go back to doing those creative projects, because without those creative projects to challenge me, I can't be as an effective teacher.
Right.
So I think like my biggest project is there's a record store in Caledonia called Second Chance Records.
Okay.
So January of 2020, before everything shut down, they had asked me to go into their new location and paint some murals.
Nice.
I had done a couple murals for them at a much smaller location. It was like 500 square feet. And I did a pink wall mural behind their cash register, and I did a David Bowie mural on one wall.
Amazing. I love
when
Bowie.
I walked into when I walked into this new location, the front of the building was 2,000 square feet, 15-foot ceilings.
Wow.
And they went, we want you to cover the entire place, but only with album art.
Oh, wow.
So we started on one main wall because they were super huge Pink Floyd fans, or like prog rock fans. So I blended artwork from 5 different Pink Floyd albums into one scene on one wall.
Nice.
And then the next feature wall was a blend of King Crimson, Court of the Crimson King, with Queen's album with the robot.
Okay, I know. Yeah.
And there's just these and then essentially what I did is I created a landscape. So the entire interior of the front of the record store is this really bizarre landscape of all of these collaged together album art. So like
Amazing.
You've got the little fox from Foxtrot in a dress standing there. Well, you've got the guy on the motorcycle from Meatloaf launching himself over the door. So it all kind of combines together in this weird little mirage. And then, so I put in over 100 hours, January 2020.
Wow.
And then we opened February 1st. And then the world shut down.
Yeah.
And then because the world shut down, they were like, well, if we can't be open, we might as well renovate the back half of the building, because there's another 2,000 square feet in the back.
Oh, wow.
And then that turned into, you can't work when we're here, but here's a key. And when we're not here, you can spend as much time as you want painting whatever you want. So I put in like another 80 hours. So I have almost 200 hours of mural work in this 4,000 square foot record store. And it's like my living art museum.
That's amazing.
And anytime obviously the last year and a half, it hasn't been good for murals, but there's just this open invitation. If a new album comes out and you like the artwork and you think you can fit it in, we'll pay you. Just tell us when to expect you. So It's like I've got I got like 2 years of like, these are all the good murals that I want to blend together, but I'm not quite there yet. The whole thing of painting murals right now is I don't enjoy doing it.
Oh,
It's too
really?
physically challenging. It's just I spend too much time thinking about how uncomfortable I am. And then you put me on a ladder and I'm like, this isn't safe. So. But one day I can do ground murals. So
Nice.
that's a start.
What's the street art scene like in Dunnville? Is there a lot of like murals on buildings and things, or?
No. There are, I think maybe there's 5 murals in all of Dunnville.
Oh, okay.
And I've done 2 of them.
Oh.
So there's been a really big shift in the last couple years. Prior to having my own business here, I volunteered with an arts focused nonprofit that went bust because of COVID. So up until that point, we had an organization that did a lot to promote art, to promote and support local music and local visual artists in a variety of ways. And then 2020 and 2021 happened. And then it was, well, how do we do this? How do we regroup?
Yeah.
And I mentioned that project related to the Grand River earlier. So there's an organization called Waterlution that really changed sort of the public art environment here, because they got a bunch of funding and said, we want 10 works of art to be created along the Grand River watershed and Lake Erie. But they have to educate people about the importance of water while teaching them art skills. Cool. And the community has to help make the mural. So my mural was called Inheritance, and it was the idea that all sorts of people in this community like to argue it's not our fault that we live here.
Yeah.
That happened 100 years ago, and everyone just needs to move on with their lives. And my argument is, well, you live here and you've inherited the responsibility to care for the water, the land, nature. And a lot of my artwork focused on, or regional artwork anyways, is focused on reminding people that we just live here. Everything that we experience isn't built for us. It's not made for us. In fact, we don't really require most of it to live. All the plants, animals, they do require it, and we're just stomping around and taking advantage of it.
Yeah.
So the idea was that the water is in our hands and everything grows from the water. And then more recently, another funding program, our BAA did some work and got grants to create 13 portable murals.
Okay.
So they were 4x8 panels on very large easels, essentially, but it was the same concept. You create a design, let the community help you create it.
Cool.
So we did that in September. Mine was a map of the lower Grand River from Dunnville to Lake Erie, but the entire greenery of the map is comprised of many layers of animals in different shades of green. So it's almost like this camo effect.
Okay.
But it's that idea is that so the project was called Lifeline, but the idea is that that the river is the lifeline.
Right.
And it's a lifeline for all the living things. And we just live here.
Yeah.
And please remember that. So those are going to get spread out throughout the community for the summer. Nice. But it's really quite great as someone who 20 years ago was like, I just want to grow up and make a mural in my hometown.
Yeah.
And like at the time it was kind of unheard of because there was only one mural in town. And now there's multiple, and there's multiple organizations and people in the community invested in seeing it happen.
That's great.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
That's ideally what I want to see, is just, I don't care if I get the contract. I just want to know that artists are making art and it's being put out into the public.
Yeah.
And my big thing now is trying to get the teens in my studio to start thinking large. It's really great. What you do is amazing. How much bigger can you do it?
Yeah.
Because they aren't necessarily getting that exposure and that experience in the high school like we did.
Right.
It was great. You did all these cute little paintings. Awesome. Now can you put it on a wall?
Yeah.
I don't know. Can I? turns out you can, and it takes a lot longer than you think, and
Yeah.
it's a lot of struggle and a lot of, trial and error, but ultimately it's a learning experience. And the wonderful thing about paint is it's not finished until you decide it's finished. So
Yeah, true.
make all the mistakes you want, you can just paint them over.
Yeah. Nice. And
Yeah.
you're raising a whole nother generation of street artists. So who
Oh,
knows?
I hope
Who
so.
knows
I
what
hope
could
so.
take place in Dunnville over the next 20 years, right?
That's it. That's all it is, right?
That's
I
awesome.
always tell people, because there's a lot of people that think, one, I'm crazy, and that what I'm doing is completely delusional,
Really?
and they assume that I have all kinds of money behind this project when I don't. Like, this is being blood, sweat, and tears, and whatever money I can scrape together. One day I might make a good living off of this, but
Yeah.
like wholeheartedly, this is just getting established. Even though we've been around for 8 years, we're still constantly finding new markets and getting the word out, because there's a lot of people in the community that prefer not to let people know that we exist.
Really?
Um, we're too radical. We're too radical.
Good. That's a good thing.
But it's, yeah, that's how I feel. That's
Yeah.
how I feel. And like a lot of people are like, you were always an instigator when you were in high school. And I was like, yeah,
Okay.
because you can just make the things you want to see in the world.
Yeah.
Like the whole reason I started doing concerts was because I had to beg for rides to go to Hamilton or Niagara to see a show.
Yeah.
And there's only so many times your parents are going to willingly drive you an hour out of town
Yep.
and sit in their car for a couple hours till 11 o'clock at night to drive you home. So it was, well, why can't I just get the bands to come here?
Yeah.
Perfect. Let's get the bands to come here.
Yeah.
Great. Let's do it. And then all of a sudden we had the opportunity where now we have shows. So anyone that wanted to have a local band had an excuse to practice and
Nice.
play.
Yeah. So you're fostering the
So
music
it's
scene
always,
there and stuff. That's amazing.
yeah. So it's always that idea that like, if it doesn't exist, make it exist.
Yeah.
And so my message to our community has always been, we're here to hold the space to make the things that you want to exist come to life.
Yeah.
And for the last like 7 out of the 8 years, that's kind of fallen on deaf ears. I keep saying it and people are like, that's cool, and nothing ever comes of it. But last spring, I had a girl I went to high school with come to me and say, I would like to start an open mic poetry night.
Nice.
If you'd give us the space once a month, I'm driving in on a weekly basis to the city to go share my poetry, and I don't want to do it anymore. And I know that there are other people here that probably have poetry. Can we do an open mic night? Yes. What works for you? So tomorrow night is the 1-year anniversary.
Oh,
and
nice.
In 1 year, we've seen like close to 3 dozen local writers, anywhere as young as like 8 to 94.
Wow.
Come out and share their right. Like the 94-year-old is so astonishing. She showed up in October, got up in front of everybody with laryngitis and said, I wrote a book of poetry and published it 30 years ago and never read it to anyone.
Oh my God.
And I'd like to read it to you.
Wow.
And then we all just cried for the 3 poems that she wrote.
Yeah.
Because they were all this incredible story about, she was born in the 1920s on the Isle of Man.
Wow.
And then like emigrated to Canada, and then her husband died, and then she's just alone in a country she's never been in, away from all of her family at a time when women weren't independent.
Wow.
So she traveled the world as an independent woman in like the 60s, 70s, and 80s.
Huh.
And all of her writing is this really honest and authentic reflection of her life and her journey. And to hear it now as like a woman being like, oh goodness, like, I don't know how you survived through all that, right? Because it's not the culture I grew up in. And anytime someone gets rude with me, I just tell them I'll burn their house down. Just don't try and make me subdued. It's not going to work.
Couldn't do that in the 20s.
So it's just really, right? Yeah. So it's really something quite beautiful. And now that we've had a whole year of working together, the poet and I are now partnering with local farms So we're
Oh,
doing
wow.
these tourism experiences this summer. So you get to come in, you're going to have a luxury picnic, you're going to get a handmade artisan like notebook. I'm making like notebooks with like handmade paper.
Yeah.
And then that's your poetry book. It's completely filled with sorts of prompts designed for the area that we're visiting. And then you get to wander the gardens and write your reflections and then come back together and share. And then the idea is what you create in that moment. Hopefully you'll workshop it and bring it to one of our open mic poetry nights and share. So
That's beautiful.
it's just beautiful.
Yeah.
It's really beautiful. And it's one of those things where like I keep using her as an example because just having that opportunity has completely transformed her life.
Yeah.
And it wasn't something she expected. On some level, you know that changes are coming in your life, but sometimes you're not ready to be honest with yourself.
Yeah.
And the poetry kind of just slammed the situation right in front of her. It could not be ignored. It couldn't be construed in a different way. And she went, you know what? Changes have to be made. And she made them instantly. And it's really quite something to see. And I'm constantly saying, see, that's what I mean by give your idea space to live.
Yeah.
And let other people be part of it, and it will change.
Mhm.
You lose control, but it's a good loss of control. It's become its own thing, and now you're just part of it.
Yeah. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Uh,
I'm very lucky. I live a very beautiful life.
well, yeah, like I like to believe that, everyone puts energy out there and it's reciprocal.
Yes.
So the energy you give out, you get what you give, basically. And
Yes.
you put a lot of
That's
beauty
it.
out in the world. And so it's great to see that it's returned to you and you're surrounded
Yeah.
by a great community of people there and stuff. And
Yeah.
you're doing amazing things for people like that poet. That's incredible. That's such a cool
Oh,
story.
it's so awesome.
Yeah.
It's so awesome. And like that's what it always comes down to. And like sometimes I hear people being like, you're not gonna last. And my response is always, I know what this place looks like in 10 years.
Yeah.
Like you might think that I'm here right now, but like I know what 10 years from now looks like because we are so far beyond what's happening today.
Yeah.
The ripples and the impact that we're having on people. I don't care if this studio itself doesn't exist in 10 years, because if it doesn't, it's going to be replaced by something so much bigger and so much better and so much of what the community wants.
Yeah.
And I'm constantly going back to, if this isn't what the community wants, what does the community want?
Yeah. Pivot again. Yeah.
Like I didn't design this space for me. I think I have to start kind of changing that perspective a little bit, because constantly I'm like, my project can be in this dark corner over here, so it's not in the way. But like, we got 3,500 square feet. Pick a spot, own it. But it's that idea that it was never designed for me. I can work anywhere.
Right.
I can work in the woods. I can work in a tiny hole in the wall in St. Catharines with no windows. I can work in this big, gigantic space. It doesn't matter. I mean, when I was in high school, I did all my art on a sheet on my bed so that the paint wouldn't get on my bed.
Nice.
I just had a drop sheet. And sometimes you would find me underneath the drop sheet and all the art supplies because I was too tired to clean up and I just go to bed. So it's that idea that like you don't need to have the best tools. You don't need to have the best materials. You don't need to have the perfect workspace, the perfect environment. You just got to start.
Yeah.
And that creativity will guide you, and it'll be done when you know it's done. And it's up to you to decide if you're willing to put in that work to make it as done as you want it, or if you decide that you're like, I've had this experience and I'd like to move on now.
Yeah. That's brilliant. Yeah. On that note, I mean, I don't want to keep you. I could talk to you for hours. This has been really great, but you're very busy, as we've known, and so I don't want to keep you all day. I'm very grateful for your time, and it's been awesome to meet you. I just want to let people know, how can they support Creative Barracks or you? Do you have events coming up? Is there ways they can support you online, etc.?
Yeah. So our website is Barracks by the Grand. barracksbythegrand.ca. That's our social media on Facebook and Instagram as well. If you want to follow my shenanigans, you can find me on Instagram as Lacie VDub, which is the same handle I use on TikTok as well.
Okay. Awesome. All that will be in the show notes. So
amazing.
Thank you again. I hope you have a great day. And I hope we get to talk again soon. We'll have to do a part 2 of this.
Yes, yeah. Oh, that'd be awesome.
Nice. Thank you so much again, Lacie.
Yeah, thank you. Have a great day.
I mean, right? Lacie is pretty cool and so inspirational and talented. Many, many thanks to her for taking the time out of her very busy schedule to have a chat with little old me. It was an absolute pleasure meeting you, and I can't wait to see what's next for you. Thank you to you for listening to this or watching it. Make sure you check out the links in the show notes for how you can find out more about Lacie and her work and Creative Barracks, and hopefully support them in any way you can. And if you're up for it, take a trip to Dunnville. It seems beautiful. As always, I really appreciate you watching and listening to this. If you'd like to leave a comment or like or share or review or whatever you feel like doing, all input is good and greatly appreciated. And if you're a maker, once again, if you want to be a part of the show, head over to woodbeard.ca/podcast and fill out the application form. You can also drop a DM on Instagram at @IamWoodbeard or email me at podcast@woodbeard.ca. I would absolutely love to meet you and share your work with people. So until next time, be there for each other and have a good one. Woodbeard Meets Makers is a Woodbeard production. Audio engineering and production by Woodbeard. Editing by Woodbeard. Music by Woodbeard. Awkwardness, Woodbeard.